I've had messages back and forth lately with so many vegan activists who seem to deeply believe that the only thing in politics that's real is the street. Standing on the street, standing there with a sign, standing there with a mask, standing there with a message, whether they are screaming it, weeping and wailing, or standing in absolute silence in a vigil. Whether they're singing or chanting, it's the street. It's on the street that they feel politics happens, that their convictions are proven. It's street protest alone that's the criterion for what's real. It's, for them, the most real form of activism, and it's the symbol they cling to in proving that they are a real activist. And when they're challenged by the ideas they see on my channel, or maybe even just ideas stated in an email or a Facebook post, I notice they immediately turn to numbers. I've been getting this a lot lately, a lot of really dubious numbers sent to me. They say, oh, well, 500 people were at that protest. And I look at the photographs and I look at the videotape, and it doesn't look to me like 500 people were at that protest. Like, oh, well, they keep a tally. And over so many months of spending so many hours standing in the street, they say they reached over 1,000 people. That 1,000 people who talked to them, maybe just for 5 minutes, I don't know, maybe for 15 minutes. Pretty short street conversations. And they somehow got a positive message back. The vegan message got across to 1,000 people. What influenced you more as a child or even as a teenager? Was it seeing a man in the street holding a sign, or was it reading Batman, Tintin, comic books? I'm in a position now where I can look at these numbers and really say, look, I wrote a children's storybook. Do you really think that with a form of activism like that, do you think it would be a huge boast to say I reached 1,000 people? Or I reached 2,000 people for a published children's storybook? These aren't big numbers, right? But writing a storybook and getting an illustrator, it takes time, takes effort, takes money. Ultimately, it takes talent. And I don't have any kind of false confidence here that I'm so extraordinarily talented, or that the artist I'm working with is so talented that this book is necessarily going to be a hit. I'm not going to claim the book would reach millions of readers. But sure, these numbers that the street protesters are bragging about, 500, 1,000, and 2,000, the numbers like 1,000, 2,000 are over years of hard work standing in the street. Those numbers are really nothing to me. And the conversations they're having, I know some of them may be deep. I know there are YouTube channels that carefully cut together a collage of deep and meaningful interactions between these street protesters and the strangers in the street they're reaching out to randomly. But you know what? I got more than 10,000 people who watched a video on my channel specifically criticizing Noam Chomsky and his views about veganism. The people who clicked on that video, the people who took the time, sat down and chose to watch that video, they either already had a serious interest in these kinds of ethical and political questions attached to veganism, or they had an interest in Noam Chomsky. They were interested in hearing a criticism of Noam Chomsky, and maybe they started thinking about the ethics of veganism for the first time. And guys, this is not the only example on my channel. I now have over 2.8 million views, and I have a lot of videos that are an hour long. Some of them are very in-depth discussions, and I have videos that are short but are meaningful in another sense, and they're going to be more meaningful to the people who watch them because they're not presented them at random, right? They're people seeking out that message, interested in that, what have you. The irony is, I'm the last person to come online and preach to you that YouTube activism is real activism. In my opinion, it's not. It's not. I look at YouTube as a place where maybe I can meet and collaborate with other vegans and create a platform, create a basis for other types of activism in the real world in future, right? I look at YouTube as being like a coffee shop. But there's no reason to compare the conversation that you have in a coffee shop to the conversation that you have on the street in a street protest and say that only one of those is real activism. Definitely not for the vegan cause. Definitely not for this movement, present and future. No, I say again, I don't have some kind of messianic faith in my own talent. I'm going to college to learn how to bake bread. It's possible this is really going to work out. I'm going to have a career as a baker, and I'm going to be able to use baking as a platform for vegan activism. And it's possible this plan is going to fail. It's possible I'm just going to lack whatever talent is involved in being a great baker or even a decent baker and using baking as my way ahead in the vegan movement. Why would you dismiss or denigrate the effort of somebody like that? Someone who writes a children's storybook, someone who bakes bread. We have people here in Victoria who have for years and years run vegan establishments, that community building, institution building element of veganism that are like a permanent placard for veganism. I mean, a restaurant is on the street just as much as you are holding that sign. It's holding up a sign saying veganism, you know, in a whole different manner. And it's welcoming people in instead of going out and confronting them. There are all these different efforts, all these different roads ahead. And they all reach different numbers of people in different ways. Some of them shallow, some of them deep, some of them brief, some of them long term. But we really have to move beyond this stereotype notion, this attachment we have to the street, this feeling that the street is the only thing that's real, this assumption that being on the street is the only form of activism, and it's the only thing that can make you an activist.